All right, so I think we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the ADRA International page and welcome to ADRA International's Facebook Live. My name is RJ and I work for ADRA International. And I am joined today by two of my really great and hardworking friends from work. I'll be introducing them to you in a little while. But first, I want to say to everybody who's joining us, who's watching from their homes, Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, Mario. Happy Earth Day, Elizabeth. Happy Earth Day to everybody who's supporting ADRA. You couldn't have picked a better time to join this conversation because not only we'll be talking about ADRA's work in general, but we'll be focusing on our conversation on what we're doing to help those who are affected by climate change and those who are affected by disasters. So thank you so much for joining us. So I'm starting to see some people coming in and joining us. It's a great day to join the conversation. So thank you so much. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce a couple of my, like I said, they're fun, they're hardworking, they're great, and most especially they are the experts in ADRA when it comes to emergency management and anything that has to do with disaster response. So I'd like to introduce you guys to my friends Mario and Elizabeth. Hi guys.
Hey, happy Earth Day.
Nice to see you guys. Happy Earth Day. For us here, it's been a while since we've seen each other face to face. So this is like the first time again in a long while. So what a great time to be chatting about our work again. So thank you so much. So thank you for those who have just joined in. Hello. We're going to be saying hi to you later on. So first off, I'd like to ask Mario and Liz to sort of like tell us a little bit about what you guys do at ADRA International. Tell us something about your work. Mario, let's kick it off.
Hi everyone. Yes, we work in the unit. It is Emergency Management Unit. And it is a department in ADRA International that is responsible to respond on the front line on the first time when the disaster happens. So before we are able to mobilize institutional donors, governments, agencies, we have ADRA International has funds that we use on the first hand to respond to emergencies in question of days, hours even. And we do it through our network. So I'm participating.
You're the boss.
Yes, and I'm in this position for the last 3 years.
3 years. Okay. Thank you so much, Mario. And how about you, Liz? What do you do in ADRA?
Hey, RJ. I work on the same team as Mario with the Emergency Management Unit. I'm an Emergency Response Program Manager, and I focus on the Asia and South Pacific regions and North America. So that means I provide support to our country offices before, during, and after emergencies to help them be prepared and respond to emergencies and have the resources they need to do so.
Awesome. So Mario and Liz are our go-to persons when it comes to like our emergency programs, so how we respond to those people around the world who are affected by disaster. So these are the guys who prepare the projects, who make sure funds are mobilized, and who make sure that help is getting to those who need it. So many people have actually been confused at times by our acronym ADRA or ADRA, and people think that it stands for Adventist Disaster and Relief Agency because for years we have been very visible out there in the field helping people who have been affected by disasters. So Mario, can you take us into a little bit of a journey as to what ADRA does in terms of disaster response? How big is our response? Which countries do we work in, and maybe how many disasters do we respond to in a year? Not that we're counting disasters, but hey, disasters happen every time. So Mario, take it away.
I will leave the numbers to Liz because she's the one responsible for that, dealing directly. It's true that historically ADRA, when it was founded in 1956, it was focused mainly on disasters. It was not so much on development. The D of ADRA, in fact, is for development. But ADRA was created mainly to respond to disasters. And only later, when ADRA started to, in fact, working more on development, we changed the name, and from SAWSS, which was Seventh-day Adventist Welfare or World Service, in 1984 it became ADRA, Adventist Development and Relief Agency, and this shows the two arms that ADRA work, or the two sides. Which one side we work on development, and development until a few years ago was the main part on the programs that ADRA had around the world, and ADRA was mainly known as a development organization. In these last years, it changed a little bit. The amount of projects in the disasters, in relief, increased significantly, and today we can say that disasters and development, in terms of amounts, annually in ADRA International, it's more or less the same. So we can see an increase of the importance of relief in our projects.
I'm going to ask you about, what affects or influences that increase in response, but let's go to the numbers. Liz, you've been taking down notes, I guess. How many disasters do we respond to in a year, like on average?
So talking about the number of disasters over the past few years, it's been usually between 70 and 90 different crises. But we often have more than one project and more than one response to one specific emergency. So the number of projects we've had over the past number of years has always been over 100. And last year, especially with COVID-19, we had almost 170 different projects that our unit managed in response to all the emergencies globally.
You guys are probably the busiest guys in ADRA International all throughout the year, taking note of what's happening around. Disasters just happen, both man-made and natural-made. And I'm gonna go into that, Mario, because I've mentioned, there are disasters that are natural, and then there are disasters that man-made. Can you tell us a little bit of the difference for those who are watching us?
Yes, sometimes the man-made disasters are bigger than the man-made, the natural. Natural disasters is everything that it is related with the nature. It can be hurricanes, it can be earthquakes, tsunamis that are related, volcanoes, eruptions, can be also floods, drought. On the other side, man-made, as the name says, it's everything that are directly caused by the men, and when I say men, I say women. Yeah. Also the species, and this is probably are the most terrible, which is the war, which provokes the displacement of populations, refugees, all the rest that comes. But the conflict definitely is the one that creates more. But can be also explosions in some fabrics, in some plants. It can be accidents, big accidents, industrial accidents that can happen, and sometimes it can have a combination of both. If there is a natural disasters in one plant, yes, of course, it will exacerbate the impact of the disaster in the population.
Thank you, Mario, for explaining that. Now, to our friends out there who just joined, so welcome to our Facebook Live event, and happy Earth Day. Like I said, you couldn't have joined at a better time, because we're talking about what ADRA has been doing throughout the years to help those who have been affected by disasters and the ever-changing climate that we had. So it's very important to today's conversation on the state of our Mother Earth. So thank you so much. I've seen some messages. So if you are coming from another, let us know, type in your questions or just say hi. And we're going to say hi, hopefully, in the middle of our Facebook Live. So I've seen some people probably from Colombia. I've seen some people from parts of Africa. So thank you so much for joining us. So we have been talking about ADRA's work throughout the years when it comes to helping those who have been affected by disasters in various parts of our country. And my name is RJ, and I am your host and moderator, and I am joined here by my friends from the Emergency Management Unit of ADRA International. So we have Mario and Liz. They're the experts, and they have experienced a lot of preparing our programs and projects so that we can help thousands and thousands of people and thousands of communities around the world who have been affected by our ever-changing climate and our disasters. Now, Mario, Liz, we have noted that throughout the years, we somehow see a trend, an increasing trend when it comes to the occurrence of disasters around the world. What do you think is the reason behind this? And does this have to do with our ever-changing climate?
It's not clear, and it has been observed an increase in the disasters, in the number of people affected by disasters. It's not always clear the relationship between the climate change and the number of disasters. And if you ask if there is an increase of disaster, ask the insurance companies. They will tell you it has been an increase of disaster, right. Definitely. Now, one thing that it has been proven, and for this it has quite low doubts, is that when it comes for tropical storms, so the hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, the name changed, but it's the same phenomenon. There is an increase of the magnitude of the hurricanes. And this is easy to explain, not easy, but we can understand, because the rise of the temperature in the oceans. So a hurricane, basically, it's water that was evaporated. So being more warm, the waters, so there's more water that goes in the clouds. So the hurricanes are bigger and more powerful. There is more water in the sky for that. So this is a clear and direct link that we can establish between the increase of the temperature and the magnitude of the hurricanes. This means that also a few weeks ago, I was reading in the media that the hurricane season usually starts here in the US, in the Caribbean region, the 1st of June, but this year will start on the 15th of May. So it starts earlier because, yes, the risk of happening these kind of disasters was changed, and it will end a little bit later. Yeah. So we might have also more hurricanes, or at least for a larger period of time.
I just want to share that, I was born and raised in the Philippines, and normally during this time of the year, it should be like dry and hot, but we've been getting like really strong typhoons recently. So which is crazy because, before, as I was growing up, it's unheard of. You don't get hurricanes during summer period in the Philippines, but now it's like, every other week there's going to be like a strong typhoon coming into the country. So it's, as we are observing, I think there is a connection, between the ever-changing climate and the number of disasters that we are seeing. I just want to pause a bit to say hi from our friends who have just tuned in, and they're coming from different parts of the world. This is so great. I'm going to say hi first to our friends from Madagascar, friends from ADRA, Bulgaria, hello. Finland, I'm reading the comment section there. So if you guys are watching this from another part of the world, get represented. Type in your country there and say hi to us. So we'll say back. Who else? Chile. So Mozambique. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, for supporting ADRA in this way. So yeah, for those who have just joined, Italy, hello. We have been talking about ADRA's work throughout the years when it comes to helping people who have been affected by disasters. And I am joined today by two of our hardworking colleagues and experts from the Emergency Management Unit of ADRA. So we have Mario and Liz. And I am RJ. I also work for ADRA International. So we've been talking about, ADRA in a single year could be responding to as close as 100 disasters. And that would mean hundreds and thousands of people being affected by it, both man-made and natural disasters. And for every disaster that we respond to, we create more than one project. addressing the different facets of needs that the communities have. So let's talk about the most recent disasters that you guys have worked on. Can you share anything about, say, Eastern Timor-Leste, or very recently Cyclone Saroha that has affected Indonesia? How are we guys doing in terms of our response there?
Yeah, so Cyclone Saroja hit both Eastern and Indonesia and Timor-Leste at the beginning of April, and it caused really devastating flooding and landslides. It displaced thousands of people. Many people lost their homes and were in evacuation centers. We have ADRA offices in both of those countries. Both of them have been responding to this crisis. In Eastern Indonesia, our ADRA office there has been providing emergency food rations to households that were displaced and had to leave their homes because of all the flooding. And our team in Timor-Leste has been providing emergency food, as well as emergency shelter items such as bedding, as well as cleaning kits, because one of the priorities right now is to get people back out of the evacuation centers back into their homes, and they need to be able to clean up the damage and the debris in order to do so. So both of those projects are still ongoing, and our teams in Indonesia and Timor-Leste are working really hard to do that right now.
Awesome. Can we unpack it a little bit in terms of what are the normal types of need that arise from every disaster?
So generally, we look at what's needed to sustain life in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. People need food, water, and shelter, medical care as well. ADRA's expertise is often in the initial stages is providing those critical life-saving things that households and families need after an emergency. And sometimes that looks like ADRA coming in with supplies and distributing those. Sometimes it looks like ADRA coming in with cash. If markets are functioning and if affected households have access to those markets where they can buy the life-saving items they need, we can provide them cash, and that saves us the logistics expenses, and it also gives households and affected people the dignity they need to choose if they want this food or this other food, for example, while still getting the life-saving support they need.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Mario.
On what Liz said, totally agree with her. And with cash, we are also helping the local economies. Because sometimes when we come with food or with supplies from outside, we do not realize how we are affecting the local economy. So if we give cash, it's much faster, and at the same time, you help jobs and so on.
Yeah. So it's both, the material needs and cash at the same time. But the core focus is to make sure that the most immediate life-saving needs must be provided by ADRA. So that's food, that could be water, that could be, sanitation and hygiene materials, that could be, those tarpaulin shelter kits. I remember when I was working with ADRA Philippines, we've been distributing like thousands of tarpaulins, during the first few days, because, the picture is every time a natural disaster, like say, for example, a hurricane hits, they lose their homes. No roofs above their heads, right? And sometimes, evacuation centers are crowded, so they need those extra materials to protect themselves, to provide, something above their heads. And like what we've also mentioned, sometimes it's cash. And I like what Liz has pointed out. It's about, and Mario has pointed out, it's about making sure that our community members have a choice, right? Have a choice on deciding what particular need do they want to have or addressed or be provided for by ADRA. So I know you guys have been saying hi in the chat boxes. I could see some from joining us from all the way from Yemen. Happy Earth Day. We have projects in Yemen, so go find ADRA there. Nashville, our friend Ashley is watching. Hi, hello, California. So there are some of you have been sending us questions, and we'll try our best to answer those that you've sent us. So first question is, how can we help or donate? Well, right now you can actually go and visit our website, adra.org/disaster relief. Anything that you need to know on how to help ADRA is there, and you can click on the link and you can click on the donate buttons there. So go ahead and do that, because a lot of our communities right now are experiencing hardship because of disasters. And there's another question. Maybe Liz or Mar, you can answer this. It has something to do with engineering. Is there a way that we can do to protect the people from natural disasters? Is there like an engineering strategy there, part of our disaster preparedness, I guess?
Yeah, so that's a big question. There's a whole sector of development and humanitarian work called disaster risk reduction, and I think that's focused on exactly what this question is asking. ADRA and many other organizations have done a lot of work after emergencies occur to see how can we make the impact less devastating when a similar emergency happens again in the future. And there's lots of examples of this. One example is from the Nepal earthquake in 2015. ADRA had a lot of projects helping to rebuild schools and other buildings, but rebuilding them in a way where they could better withstand earthquakes that will inevitably happen in the future. So some other examples, so engineering is a part of that, and we rely on people with that specialized training if we're, for example, building back buildings that can better withstand a earthquake or hurricane or something else. A lot of it comes to education as well, and a lot of ADRA projects have a big education component. So the community that's at risk of an emergency is aware of what to do if there's a storm approaching, or if they start to feel earthquake tremors or something like that. Another thing is looking at where the most disaster-prone areas in a community are. Perhaps an area is more prone to flooding than other areas. So we can work with that community to build buildings or shelters in areas that are maybe higher up and not as high at risk of flooding. Those are just a few examples.
Perfect.
If allow me, a few years ago there was a major cyclone. I think it was Winston in the Fiji, Vanuatu, and after that, ADRA, in partnership with the Adventist Church, we were able to build churches and schools that were Category 5 resistance. So reinforce it. More, if I look back a little bit more, years ago in Myanmar, the ADRA had built some bridges in a project that was not related on disaster preparedness, but we had built some bridges. And then there was a major cyclone. I think it was Naji. It was 2007, 2008. And several lives were saved during this cyclone, because people found refuge in these bridges that had resisted to the floods. So there are examples where ADRA, not only before but afterwards, protects the community with resistant Category 5, or if it is a earthquake like in Haiti, we build schools that were resistant to the earthquakes.
So I hope you guys are paying attention, because it's important what Mario and Elizabeth were sharing to us. We are not only there to provide help when the disaster has happened, but we're actually also helping communities prepare themselves, especially those vulnerable communities in different parts of the world, prepare themselves from disasters. Liz talked about building back better. And so these are the things that ADRA has been advocating for, and making sure that our communities can be well prepared, the next time a disaster happens. So that's a really great question. I'm glad we're able to cover that one. Mario, can you just briefly talk about some of the man-made disasters that we've responded to? I know we're down to our last minute for this conversation, but just tell us a little bit about what happened in Yemen and how we're responding to it.
Well, in the case of Yemen, ADRA has, at the time being, I suspect that is our biggest operation in the world. If it's not Yemen, I think it's between Yemen and Congo. And yes, it's a war that has been for several years. ADRA is very, very active on on the sector of health. This is Yemen became so bigger that it's no longer our unit who manage. As I said in the beginning, our unit is the one that it is on the on the front line. So Yemen now we have several millions of dollars projects with the U.S. government, with the United Nations, from European governments. But yes, this is a clear example of a man-made disaster, the war, and where ADRA is actively working for millions, literally millions of beneficiaries in the area. And it's mainly on health and nutrition, which are two of the sectors the most affected by this war.
And that leads me to another important fact about ADRA. Just because the disaster is over doesn't mean ADRA leaves the entire community on its own. So we help in the development part of it. So Mario, Liz, how do we transition normally from the emergency phase to the recovery and development phase when we do our projects? How do we do that?
I will say that it is from day one. In the past, we had this linking relief, rehabilitation, and development. Today, we have another notion, concept, which is nexus, that in fact, development and relief go hand on hand. And from day one, we should start immediately to look how the population can be self-sustainable, not depend any longer on the humanitarian aid. And it is important that we see this as a continuum. It's not separate. Okay, today it's over the emergency, tomorrow starts development. It's a follow-up on it. So that's why it's important that when ADRA or the NGOs in general, when we plan our interventions, we think on the long term. Not only it's the image, not only giving the fish, but how can they be self-sustainable and teach them to fish by themselves as soon as possible.
Right. And I remember, Liz, when we were in the Philippines, right, we visited some of the communities that were affected by Typhoon Haiyan years after it happened. Can you tell us about how the community, cope with this and how ADRA helped them?
Yeah. One thing that's really unique about ADRA is that we have offices established in well over 100 countries around the world, and those offices are there to stay before, during, and after an emergency. And the Philippines, Typhoon Haiyan is just one example of when ADRA has been there, continuing to work in communities on development years after a major crisis has hit. This particular project in the Philippines was working in communities on micro lending and microfinance activities. So households that had lost their main source of livelihood during the typhoon, which was often coconut farming, couldn't replenish those livelihoods in the short term because coconut palms had been completely wiped out from such strong winds, but they take 10 or more years to grow back and be fruitful and start creating an income for these households. So there's this project to provide training and materials to households to have another source of livelihoods and income, but it also gave them financial skills on how to manage that money, how to save, invest, and grow their funds beyond what they were able to do beforehand.
Awesome. So it's not just really about building back houses and structures, also like building the economic recovery, looking into the economic recovery of our communities. And ADRA has been doing that, with the communities that were affected by disasters. So we're nearing the home stretch of our conversation. Time flies so fast when you're having fun, but we have definitely been, blessed and graced by, the presence of our experts, Mario and Liz from the Emergency Management Unit. So I'm just gonna throw out you guys a few more questions, and this has to do, with what we're doing in terms of responding to the Corona pandemic crisis. So any updates on that one? What we've been doing so far?
Yes, ADRA has been from day one on responding to the COVID-19, and that's why last year we had the 160 plus projects. When usually on the year we have around 110 projects. thanks to the effort that ADRA made available, and with our partners, we were able to support or to impact more than 20 million people around the world. We funded projects from Canada to Chile to Africa, Asia, almost practically all around the world. Now we are on the second phase, where we have bigger projects, so it's not small projects, but bigger projects. And at the beginning was more on prevention and messaging. Now is more on impact, on long-term impact. And we have funds, I think it's around $2 million. A task force was constituted specifically for that. And they are working how bigger projects can have a bigger impact on the lives of the people. It's not so many projects, but they are larger projects, and some of them are a continuation or a follow-up from previous projects that ADRA has implemented in the past.
So there, yeah, for the information of everyone, ADRA has been working so hard also to help those who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, projects around the world are ongoing, including, you know, other projects that have been and are being implemented even before the pandemic, you know, has happened. So we are out there, and so that's why we are so grateful for everybody who has been supporting ADRA, and to those who has been asking, how can we support, how can we donate? You know, I want to mention this before we end. Just go right now to adra.org/disaster relief. That's the website. If you want information, if you want to know how you can help ADRA, just go to adra.org/disaster relief. Or you can pick up your phone now and you can call 1-800-424-ADRA. That's 2372. That's 1-800-424-ADRA 2372. That's right. So as we close, I want to ask Maria Elizabeth, any final things to share? You know, maybe some personal feelings whenever we're being responded. I know it's a tough job out there, but it can also be fun when you see other humanitarians out there. So any last words, maybe some stories to share before we close?
I have one short story that happened over 20 years ago. I was at that moment in Angola, and Angola was facing a man-made disaster. It was civil war, and at that moment we were receiving, was from ADRA Switzerland. Every year we were receiving a container of milk powder that we were distributing in nutritional centers, therapeutical centers that we had our partnership with others. And I visited the hospital of Wambo, a main city in the center of Angola, and I visited the section of pediatrics. And they were really in need of this milk powder, and we established a partnership with them. And I saw one young lady, a girl, she was 9 years old, Maria, and it impacted me really to see the state of malnourishment that she had. And 6 weeks later, I came back to do a visit or follow-up, and I saw her, and she changed a lot. And it was a clear example of the impact, because sometimes we speak 20 million people. What is that? It's a lots of people, and it's numbers, it's figures. But here we could see how we had impacted, how this milk powder project had really impacted the life of a little girl of 9 years old.
Sometimes it's the simplest help that can make the biggest change, right? And that's what we love seeing with the people that we help around the world. Liz, any last words to share, wisdom?
Yeah, you know, I'll just share, most of my job is really behind the scenes, providing support. The number of opportunities I've had a few opportunities to travel to different parts around the world, both during emergencies to support the teams and also afterwards following up on projects. And I'm always struck by how hardworking and really heroic our teams on the ground are. They're the ones, you know, working through the night. They're the ones who have often survived the emergency themselves, but are still there working in the field and in the office to make these projects happen. And so it's really worth giving all the credit to the teams that are in the countries working to make these projects happen, working in communities. And it's always inspiring just to hear their stories and to see how much work they're able to accomplish as well.
Exactly. As we say, it takes a village, to do ADRA's work, from here in the States to the countries that we implement work in, to the community partners that are receiving the help. So, and you guys who have been watching and supporting ADRA, you are part of ADRA's work from the beginning. So thank you so much. Again, please go online now to visit adra.org/disaster relief to help ADRA and to continue supporting our projects. So as we end, I'm just going to say to everyone, thank you so much. We'll continue our chat. Keep sending us your messages and your questions through our comments and chat box beneath the screen. And happy Earth Day to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Philippines, Peru, Zimbabwe, Netherlands, those countries, so many countries that have been joining us from the start of this conversation. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a great day. Happy Earth Day, everybody.